Look up at the night sky from wherever you are standing right now. It feels peaceful. It feels like a vast silent ocean that has been mapped and calculated by generations of astronomers. We build giant radar dishes in the desert. We launch billion-dollar telescopes into the freezing vacuum of space. We track near-Earth objects with obsessive precision, calculating the trajectory of every drifting asteroid and rogue comet that dares to cross our neighborhood. We sleep soundly because we believe that if a planet killer was heading our way, we would see it coming decades in advance. We would have time to panic, to build bunkers, or to launch some desperate nuclear countermeasure. That is the comforting illusion of modern science. But what if the ultimate destroyer does not reflect light? What if it emits no radio waves, leaves no thermal signature, and makes our most advanced tracking systems utterly blind? Imagine an entity resting on your kitchen table right now. It is no larger than a regular apple. You could wrap your hands around it. Yet, this tiny sphere holds the compressed mass of a dozen mountain ranges. Now, picture that apple tearing through the solar system at thousands of kilometers per second. It does not just graze the atmosphere. It does not explode in the sky like a meteor. It punches straight through the planet. And straight through you. Welcome to Astro Cynic. Today we are opening the classified files on primordial black holes. These are the ghosts of the Big Bang, wandering aimlessly through the cosmic dark like invisible bullets. And humanity is sitting right in the firing line. Forget everything you have been taught about the giant black holes lurking at the center of galaxies. Those supermassive monsters are terrifying. Yes, but they are predictable. They are anchored in place, surrounded by blazing accretion disks that scream their location across millions of light years. They are the apex predators of the universe, but they stay in their cages. The threat we are talking about today is infinitely more subtle, and because of that, infinitely more lethal. To understand this invisible terror, we have to rewind the clock back to the very first fraction of a second after the universe was born. Back in the 1970s, the physicist Stephen Hawking proposed a mathematical model that shattered our conventional understanding of stellar death. Before his work, scientists believed black holes could only be forged in the dying fires of massive stars, collapsing under their own gravity. But Hawking realized that during the Big Bang, the cosmic pressure was so incomprehensibly violent that it did not need a dying star. The sheer crushing force of the expanding universe could squeeze microscopic pockets of matter so tightly that they collapsed in on themselves instantly. These are not the corpses of dead suns. These are the leftover shrapnel of creation itself. We call them primordial black holes. Think about the implications of that for a second. We are talking about objects that have existed since the absolute beginning of time. They have been drifting through the void for nearly 14 billion years. Because they are so incredibly small, some barely the size of an atom, others the size of a golf ball, they cannot consume enough matter to create a glowing disk of superheated gas. They are completely dark. They do not emit Hawking radiation fast enough to explode. And they do not interact with electromagnetic forces. They are the ultimate stealth weapons of the cosmos. According to the most terrifying astrophysical models, our own solar system might be saturated with them. They could be passing through the space between Earth and Mars right now, completely undetected. They are like invisible landmines floating in the dark ocean of space, just waiting for a gravitational current to pull them toward a living world. And the most chilling part is that we would never know one was approaching until the exact moment it struck. You might wonder how something so small could possibly matter in the grand scale of a planetary system. To grasp the horror of a primordial black hole, you have to throw away your everyday intuition about size and weight. Let us conduct a thought experiment. Pick up an apple. Feel its weight in your palm. Maybe 200 grams of flesh and seeds. Now, imagine taking the entire mass of the Earth, every ocean, every continent, the boiling iron core, the billions of tons of rock, and compressing all of it down until it fits perfectly into the volume of that single apple. The density becomes a mathematical nightmare. Gravity is no longer just a force that keeps your feet on the ground. It becomes a localized tyrant, warping the very fabric of spacetime around it. If you were to stand a few meters away from this apple-sized singularity, the gravitational pull would not just drag you toward it, it would stretch you. The difference in gravitational force between your head and your feet would be so extreme that your body would be spaghettified. torn into a ribbon of single atoms before you even realized you were dying. This is the entity we are dealing with. A microscopic puncture wound in reality itself. Because its event horizon is so infinitesimally small, perhaps just a few millimeters across, it does not swallow whole planets in a single gulp. Instead, it acts like a surgical scalpel moving at relativistic speeds. When a primordial black hole drifts into the gravitational well of our Sun, its trajectory curves. It picks up velocity, accelerating to unimaginable speeds. It becomes a cosmic bullet, completely frictionless, completely unstoppable. It slices through the vacuum, bending the starlight around it in tiny, microscopic distortions. If an astronomer happened to be looking at the exact right patch of sky, at the exact right millisecond, they might see a momentary flicker, a brief lensing effect where a distant star seems to duplicate itself. But no human eye and no current satellite network is fast enough to catch it. It approaches in absolute silence. Let us freeze time for a moment and examine the sheer physical dread of this scenario. The universe is a chaotic, violent place, but usually, it gives us the courtesy of a warning. A supernova blasts out a wave of neutrinos before the light hits us. A massive asteroid reflects the Sun, giving us years to track its orbit. But the primordial black hole offers no such mercy. It is a blind executioner. It does not hate us. It does not even know we exist. We are simply a cluster of organic matter that happens to be intersecting its 14 billion-year trajectory. This forces us to confront a deeply uncomfortable truth about our place in the cosmos. We build our societies, our careers, and our daily routines on the assumption of geological stability. We assume the ground beneath our feet will always be there tomorrow. But astrophysics tells us that stability is an illusion. We are floating on a fragile crust of cooled rock, spinning through a shooting gallery where the bullets are completely invisible. Now, ask yourself what happens when one of these microscopic singularities actually makes contact. Hollywood has conditioned us to expect a spectacle. We expect a blinding flash in the upper atmosphere, a thunderous roar echoing across the hemisphere, and a wall of fire-consuming cities. But a primordial black hole does not care about cinematic drama. It is a surgical instrument of the cosmos. If a black hole the size of an apple, or even a grain of sand, were to intersect with Earth, the initial entry would be eerily quiet. It is moving too fast and its cross-section is too small to push a massive shockwave of air ahead of it like a conventional asteroid. Instead, it punches a microscopic hole straight through the ozone layer. As it hits the crust, perhaps somewhere in a quiet suburban neighborhood or the middle of the ocean, it does not leave a massive crater. It does not smash the crust like a clumsy piece of space rock. It alters the very geometry of the planet with the cold, absolute precision of a Boolean subtraction in a computer-aided design program, instantly deleting matter from reality without disturbing the macroscopic structures around it. But the quantum physics of its passing are apocalyptic. The immense localized gravity of the singularity pulls the surrounding soil, water, and rock into its event horizon. This matter is accelerated to a significant fraction of the speed of light in a fraction of a millisecond. The friction of the Earth itself being ripped apart on a subatomic level generates a blinding burst of hard X-rays and gamma radiation along the trajectory. If you were standing a few hundred meters from the entry point, you would not hear an explosion. You would simply feel a tremor. See a blinding vertical shaft of blue light shoot into the heavens. And then your cellular structure would begin to disintegrate from the sudden, massive dose of ionizing radiation. The real horror, however, is not on the surface. It is what happens as this entity burrows downward. It does not stop. It cannot stop. The entire mass of the Earth presents absolutely no physical resistance to a singularity. It plunges through the mantle, tearing a microscopic tunnel that instantly collapses behind it due to the surrounding pressure. As it pierces the molten iron core, the intense magnetic fields of our planet are violently disrupted. Geologists monitoring seismic stations would suddenly see impossible data. A straight line of localized earthquakes shooting straight through the center of the planet. They would be completely baffled, unable to find a tectonic fault line that explains a rupture slicing through the solid inner core. Within minutes, the primordial black hole exits the other side of the planet, perhaps erupting out of the ice sheets of Antarctica. shooting back into the dark void of space as silently as it arrived. It leaves behind a wounded world. The internal shockwaves bouncing around the core could trigger simultaneous supervolcanic eruptions across different continents days or weeks later. We would face a sudden, inexplicable geological apocalypse, and we would die never knowing that an invisible relic of the Big Bang was the trigger. But that is the optimistic scenario. That is the scenario where the black hole is moving fast enough to achieve escape velocity and leave us behind. What if it is slower? What if its trajectory and speed cause it to become trapped within the gravitational pull of our own planet? This is where the physics of cosmology turn into pure existential terror. Imagine the black hole enters the Earth, but it does not have enough momentum to punch completely through and fly away. Instead, it reaches the other side, stops in the upper mantle, and then falls back down due to gravity. It begins to oscillate. It swings back and forth through the core of our planet, like a pendulum made of pure destructive mass. With every pass, it consumes a tiny fraction of the dense inner material. It is a cosmic parasite, and our planet is the host. You would not notice it immediately. The sky would still be blue. The sun would still shine. But deep beneath your feet, a countdown has begun, over thousands of years, or perhaps much faster depending on its initial mass. The black hole steadily eats the core. It grows. As it grows, its gravitational reach expands, allowing it to consume matter at an exponentially faster rate. The ground beneath our cities would begin to hollow out. The magnetic field, generated by the spinning dynamo of our iron core, would weaken and eventually collapse entirely. Without the magnetic field, the solar wind would strip away our atmosphere, boiling the oceans into space. But even that slow death would be interrupted by the final collapse. Eventually, the structural integrity of the planet would fail. The crust would shatter, folding inward as the remaining mass of the Earth is sucked into the singularity. In its final moments, Earth would not be a planet anymore. It would just be a brief, violent swirl of superheated rock and gas spiraling down a drain that is barely larger than a basketball, before vanishing completely from the universe. Some astronomers and theoretical physicists argue that we might have already experienced a near miss. They point to the vast, unexplained scars on our planet and others in the solar system. Consider the Tunguska event of 1908. In a remote region of Siberia, a massive explosion flattened 80 million trees over 2,000 square kilometers. The official narrative points to an asteroid or comet airburst. But for decades, scientists were deeply troubled by one glaring anomaly. There was no crater. There were no significant fragments of a meteorite found at the epicenter. Just a devastated landscape of charred, flattened pines. In the 1970s, two physicists proposed a radical, highly controversial hypothesis. They suggested that the Tunguska event was not caused by a rock from the sky, but by a primordial black hole with the mass of a small asteroid passing directly through the Earth. According to their calculations, the entry of such a singularity would create a supersonic shockwave in the atmosphere, perfectly matching the destruction seen in the taiga. The black hole would have plunged into the ground, passed through the interior, and exited somewhere in the North Atlantic Ocean, leaving virtually no trace other than the atmospheric blast wave. While this theory is fiercely debated and largely dismissed by the mainstream scientific community today, the mathematics behind it are sound. The physics allow for it. And that is exactly what makes the universe so deeply unsettling. Science cannot definitively prove that a microscopic black hole did not slice through our world a century ago. Let us dig deeper into the mechanics of this theoretical impact. If a primordial black hole were to pass through a human body, the event would be over in a fraction of a nanosecond. You would not feel pain. Your nervous system is far too slow to register the trauma. The singularity would punch a hole through your flesh so clean and microscopic that it might not even sever an artery. But the gravitational tidal forces exerted in that infinitesimal moment of transit would violently rearrange the molecular bonds of your cells. The path of the black hole would leave a microscopic tunnel of completely denatured proteins, broken DNA, and irradiated tissue. It would be a fatal wound delivered by a ghost. You would simply collapse, dead from catastrophic systemic failure, with no visible cause of death. Now scale that intimate, personal horror up to a planetary level. A primordial black hole wandering through a densely populated city would act as a silent eraser of life. It would carve a perfectly straight, invisible line through skyscrapers, concrete, steel, and flesh. Buildings would not collapse immediately. The structural damage would be microscopically thin. But the radiation pulse, the intense burst of hard X-rays generated by the sudden accretion of atmospheric gases and building materials, would silently irradiate thousands of people along its path. It is a sniper rifle fired by the cosmos. And we are completely blind to the shooter. We look through our telescopes and marvel at the beauty of the cosmos. The glowing nebulas and the majestic spiral arms of distant galaxies. We construct narratives of human triumph, believing that one day we will conquer the stars. But the cosmos does not care about our ambitions. The universe is not a cradle designed to protect humanity. It is a vast, unfeeling firing range, and we are suspended right in the middle of it, completely exposed. Every morning we wake up, look at the sun and assume that our survival is guaranteed by the laws of physics. We build our fragile cities of glass and steel, completely oblivious to the invisible shrapnel of the Big Bang tearing through the space around us. The silence of the cosmos is not a promise of peace. It is just the statistical probability that our number has not been pulled yet. The primordial black holes, those microscopic singularities forged in the absolute heat of creation, are still out there. They are raining down through the galaxies in their billions, passing through dying stars, slicing through dead worlds, and perhaps, eventually, intersecting with the orbital path of Earth. Consider the sheer arrogance of our existence. We are a species that panics over a fluctuation in the stock market or a power grid failure. Yet we are entirely defenseless against a subatomic anomaly that could evaporate our oceans and crush our continents into a singularity the size of a marble. The next time you feel a faint, unexplained tremor beneath your feet in the dead of night, do not immediately assume it is just the tectonic plates of the Earth settling into a new position. Do not brush it off as a minor geological event. It might be a phantom from the dawn of time, colder than the void and heavier than a mountain range, drilling its way through the iron heart of our world at a fraction of the speed of light. We are blind to the true terrors of the cosmos. And perhaps that blindness is the only psychological defense mechanism keeping us sane. But sanity is just a temporary shield against reality. Do you think humanity has any theoretical chance of surviving against a cosmic threat we cannot even perceive with our most advanced technology? Or are we just waiting for an executioner who does not even know we are on the chopping block? Let me know your deepest thoughts in the comments below. Do not forget to subscribe to Astro Cynic as we continue to tear away the comforting lies of modern science and expose the terrifying, undeniable truths of the universe. And remember, always question the sky.